Welcome to Disability 24/7 with Christine Brown
and Kyle Pigman, and we are excited to have you.
And I'm Lindsey Evans. I'm normally producing behind the scenes, but today's a special edition, so I'm joining the podcast.
This is a podcast by people with disabilities and for people with disabilities about disability issues.
And today's episode is all about autism, especially Autism Acceptance Month in April. Today are Jerrod Smalley from NBC4 WCMH TV in Columbus. A little background on Jerrod's connection to the autism community. He has hosted the yearly special on NBC4 called The Autism Puzzle for 15 years because of his two sons being diagnosed with autism, and he decided to retire the program after last year.
Our next guest, we actually have Zoe Gross, who's the Director of Advocacy at the Autism Self Advocacy Network, which aims to increase autism advocacy and make the world in which autistic people enjoy equal access rights and opportunities. And their motto, which is one of my favorites, is nothing about us without us.
And last but not least, we have Amy Zender from the Autism Society of Central Ohio. The Autism Society of Central Ohio hopes to improve the lives of all affected by autism, providing advocacy, education, information, and referral support and community resources in Central Ohio.
How are you doing today, Jerrod, Zoe, and Amy?
Great. Yeah, doing good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Jerrod said great too.
All right, I have just a quick little disclaimer before we get started. I want to clarify for our audience and our guests that you'll hear us use both the terms people with autism and autistic, depending on who's speaking. For example, I'm more comfortable being called autistic, but Kyle and Christine prefer person-first language, so they'll be referring to people with autism. It's just something that we have a difference of perspective on, and most of the autistic community and people with autism have a different perspective on. And we want to make sure that you can choose whether you want to use disability first or person first language based on what you're most comfortable with. So if you're listening to us as a guest or as an audience member, choose the one that's best for you and make sure people follow what you like. And neither is wrong. And we want to just encourage you to do whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. So now we're going to take some time and ask some questions to our special guests and just talk about Autism Acceptance Month.
Jerrod, how did your sons Brady and Tyler got diagnosed with autism?
First of all, my oldest Brady is now 18 years old, which is a very scary thought to me. I can't believe it's gone that fast. But before Brady, right after Brady was a year old, it became clear that he was no longer meeting some benchmarks in terms of his development. He originally had speech, and then his speech went away. He was able to make eye contact and play some basic games, and some of those skills started to go away right after he turned a year and kind of get to 18 months. And so we worked with Help Me Grow with Delaware County Children's Services, and then we eventually got a screening for autism. And he was clearly right. He was diagnosed with autism very quickly. And his younger brother, Tyler, when he came along a couple of years later, frankly, Tyler never even showed some of those developmental signs that Brady originally did. And so it was pretty clear that he was going to be diagnosed. And that has been, as I think everyone on this listening to this podcast will understand, autism is a way of life. And as you evolve and as you grow, you start to understand more about what our abilities are, where we struggle, and where we can find our best selves. And that's what we've done with Brady and Tyler their whole life. And it has been challenging, but it's been one of the most amazing journeys I've ever been on. And I think it's helped me grow up. It's helped me mature. It's helped me understand what real empathy is and what it's like to really appreciate things in life. And I love them dearly. And we have, I think we have a great set of people working with them. They go to Bridgeway Academy here in Columbus. It's been an incredible place for them. And I'm actually just so curious and excited about their future to see what we end up doing together. And it's been, you know, as you'd imagine, there are tears shed. It's not always a smiling, wonderful journey, but that's for any person, no matter what their ability level is. And it's one of the things that makes you human and makes you real. And it's the thing that I never, at the beginning, I didn't know that I would ever be a person to say this, but I'm so extraordinarily thankful that we went on this journey together. And I think a lot of good came from it.
Okay, so Zoe, what is your connection with autism? If you have one, tell us a little more about ASN in your own words.
Sure. So I'm autistic, and currently all of us working for the Autistic Self Advocacy Network are autistic. The Autistic Self Advocacy Network is a policy advocacy organization. We're based in Washington, D.C., and we're run by and for autistic adults in the United States. So some of our policy goals are expanding Medicaid home and community-based services, ending the use of restraint and seclusion in public schools, and ending the use of electric shock devices at the Judge Rotenberg Center. You may have known something about that, as well as other things like expanding community-based employment and ending the use of sub-minimum wage, so paying people with disabilities less than minimum wage to do the same job as someone else would make minimum wage doing. It's just very important to us that autistic people are heard in the conversation around autism policy. For too long, these conversations were people were having those conversations kind of among non-autistic people about what should happen for us. And we felt it was really important to get in there and have our say in these policy matters, and make sure that what's important to us when it comes to policy, when it comes to research, all of that is being heard.
Thank you, Zoe. Amy, could you tell us more about the Autism Society of Central Ohio and your personal connections to the community, if you have one?
I do. I'm a mom. I have a son who is 8 going on 9. Who, yeah, pretty young. Like Jerrod said, we knew something was up, and we went through the long wait lists that there are to get assessments done. So I was just a parent who felt lost, and I happened to find the Autism Society, and wanted to join because it was everything I was looking for. And we're just looking to make connections, whether it's between parents, helping each other out through support groups, or getting resources out to families. I know we do a lot of internet research and digging, but sometimes just having a conversation with somebody about something they've been through is the best way to get us through to the next step.
So I will talk about my experience of autism. First, I was just diagnosed with epilepsy and some other things. Then it wasn't till I was in my late 30s that we really found out about this, because all the way back in the 1980s, people wouldn't think of autism back then. It was like the only way they thought you were autistic was if you were nonverbal back in those days. And now everyone, it's about 1 in 12 individuals to me, get this. It's not always accurate, but the thing is, though, with having this, it's made me have such a strong mind being into changing policy. I'm big into policy advocacy. I sleep on it. And it's really, I got something done, like getting rid of this age restriction for people with disabilities working, because we've had that. And that's not good, and that's age discrimination. Okay, so Kyle.
Yes, because I admit I've never been diagnosed with autism, but people have noticed my patterns of I'm sensitive to loud noises at times, and with the sirens, I've said crikey at times, and also and even my Special Olympics coaches notice my patterns too, and other people. And for a long time, I considered myself with mild developmental disabilities, but I finally accepted that I'm autistic, and just because I don't know if my family may have not understood my patterns. I admit, when my family came around when my father was living, I hid from them because I just didn't want to be seen at the time. But I've grown up the past many years. I've gotten better connected with people, but there's still some patterns. I'm still very selective on who I hang out with, and just when certain individuals wanted to hang out with me, I just turn them down due to sometimes there's distrust at times, but I've gotten better over the years, but there's still some patterns I still have. And that's the reason I accepted that I have autism and autistic, and I appreciate, and I've learned to be grateful for that. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. And I've talked to other people who seem to be normal. They've had autism too. And I'm going to throw this to Lindsey now.
Hey, I want to say thank you, Christine and Kyle, for sharing those stories. I think that's the first time we've talked about being autistic on the podcast. So this is awesome. And also to the three guests who have shared their personal stories. It means a lot that you're so vulnerable with us. I actually found out I was autistic late in life, kind of like Christine. I only found out about 2 years ago when I was in 2022. I have had a consistent pattern of different, socially aversive behaviors and things like that since I was a kid. But I'm very high masking. I'm a female and I grew up in the 90s. So I got immediately thrown into talented and gifted classes, and I'm highly intelligent. So I flew right under the radar. And I'm still kind of unmasking and trying to figure out like my place in the world as an autistic female. I am only really out publicly to my friends and family. So there's a lot of internalized ableism that I still have. So I think it's important to share my perspective, as scary as it is, because I think there's a lot of adults who are past that 22-year-old age who didn't have supports, aren't going to get supports, and also are still unraveling like the differences that they've had growing up. So that's kind of my story. And I am just really happy to be surrounded by other people with varying levels of autism and different needs, because I feel like I was a special education teacher for a very long time and I taught exclusively kids with autism. And for the longest time, I was like, I only feel really myself when I'm teaching my class, duh, because I'm also autistic. So I think that's been really fun to meet different people who have autism as well, or who say that they're autistic, and get to know their connection to the community, because it helps me to unpack some of the things about myself. So yeah.
So what made you decide to work with and support people with autism? This is for all the guests.
Sure, so I can go first if folks don't want to yet. When I was in college, I was really struggling, and it's very common for autistic people to have a hard time in the years after high school with the transition to whatever they're doing next, be that work in the community or a support program or higher education or whatever it may be. There's just a level of independent living requirements that kind of goes up, and that bump up was really challenging for me, as it is for many people. That difficulty made me want to connect with other autistic people. And when I did, I started to learn about ASAN and about our policy platforms and the need to get autistic people interested in policy advocacy and to make policy accessible to more people. And that was really interesting to me. That led to me getting an internship where I worked on the Hill for a summer in a Senate committee office, where I later came back and worked for a year after college. getting that policy experience was amazing for me, and worked in the government for a while. Then I came back to ASN, where I've been working going on 7 years now. For me, the important part about working with the autistic community is there's a lot that hasn't been done yet to get the autistic community involved in policy advocacy. So, for example, at ASN, we're always trying to make policy issues more accessible to people by creating resources that are in easy read or plain language or video format, so that people who aren't comfortable with academic level written resources can still understand these complex policy topics. We'll take something as complicated as the federal budget process. So the process to get a budget approved through the House and the Senate, and all the different committees that it goes through. We'll break that down at a 4th grade reading level. We'll make it in with icons, picture assisted. We'll make it as a video, just so that as many people as possible can access that information. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, is getting more people that policy information so that everyone can get involved in the political process and in policy advocacy.
That's awesome. I actually wanted to just reiterate that if you're listening to this and you need plain language stuff, I go to ASN constantly for plain language guides of things, and I use it in my work outside of the podcast, and I love the plain language materials. So if you're ever looking for stuff, they're kind of the gold standard, I would argue, of like accessible plain language guides, and you should look into it if you need it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, Jerrod, or if you would like to go next.
Be happy to. I think one of the things that I have learned over the last roughly 20 years is if you've met a person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And people present in so many different ways. Obviously, you have people like Zoe doing extraordinary work at the government level. And then you have people who are, struggling with function, struggling with, verbal communication. And so the spectrum does run broad, and it's very difficult, I think, in my career trying to talk about autism, to try to make that point to people that they truly process that everybody is unique. Every one of us is unique, no matter if we're diagnosed with a disability or not. We are all individuals, and we're all uniquely equipped. But certainly people on the spectrum, it is a broad range of abilities, connectivity, and comfort. And it is something that has always fascinated me about the subject. And it's one of the reasons why, you mentioned, Kyle, earlier that we decided to retire our autism puzzle program this year. One of the reasons we decided to do that is because I wanted to take a step away from it, doing it for 15 years. And I wanted to think more broadly about disability, not just under the umbrella of autism, but under all disabilities. People with Down syndrome and other disabilities. For example, Kyle, you mentioned being a Special Olympics athlete. I enjoy meeting all kinds of people and seeing how they live. I'm fascinated by people. It's one of the reasons I went into journalism. I like meeting people, understanding people at their level. And it's one of the things that really excites me about this job every day. This job is really hard, but this job is also a way to connect with people on their level. And it is one of the things that excites me more about it. And it's one of the reasons why I want to evolve. And the only thing I have learned about life from this job is that if you don't evolve and you don't elevate your thought, you're doing it wrong. And so I'm really encouraged to see what we do next in terms of highlighting people of all abilities.
Now let's Amy answer.
I mean, my son was definitely my driving push, but in hindsight, I grew up in a very neurodiverse family. And like Jerrod said, everyone's unique. And I think everyone can use a little bit more education on this subject, because we can all do a little bit more self-discovery and find things about ourselves of, what works for us and what doesn't. And just extending that empathy to all these different families and these children and these adults. We really are all in this world together. So, I just really enjoy having like I said, we have support groups and get-togethers and really just building a community. So, yeah.
Thank you, Amy. And Jerrod, you already answered the question. I didn't have to, and thank you for answering the question about retiring the autism puzzle on NBC4 after 15 years. Jerrod, is your station planning to continue to do stories on autism?
Yes, we continued as we normally would in the month of April, and that's just because that's what we do. But no, that the decision that we made to move away from one program was simply based on trying to come up with new concepts and new ways to tell stories. And you know, I think I wanted something else to rejuvenate me, something else to get me excited. And so that was all that decision was about. The programming is the same. We do plenty of great stories. We've done plenty this month. For example, it was brought up earlier about the inequality of wage for people with disabilities who, you know, ensuring that people are not taken advantage of, ensuring that people are paid their full honest wage. That's something that we have done numerous pieces on, including this month. So it is something that is just a part of what we do on a daily basis. And I'm actually really proud of that. The fact that we don't need a special to do this kind of programming, because we try to commit to do it regularly every day because it's what we should do.
You just mentioned really quickly that I saw one of those pieces about the wage gap, and I just wanted to commend, because I think your inclusion of other different kinds of stories continues to cut down the stigma on like neurodiversity in general, and shows the broader range of people instead of just certain kinds of people. So I think it's really cool that you guys are adding more stories about different kinds of disabilities. I think it's super commendable. And I'm a journalist background myself, so I know how it feels when you get that itch to try to find something new to talk about.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And I know, you know, Amy and Zoe can probably speak to this as well about, I think it's important that we show things that are everyday life, that are common. Autism is everyday life. You know, we're 1 in 34 individuals diagnosed now in the US. That's 1 in every classroom. You know what I mean? That's just life. It is a part of daily life. We need to be a reflection of daily life. And so a lot of people will look at television and say, you know, all they do is talk about bad news, or they talk about, you know, the terrible thing that happened. Well, that's a part of it. You know, the old expression is no one talks about all the planes that land. You know what I'm saying? However, it is our duty to talk about all things in general, about the good, the difficult, the things that affect your life. Without question, it is important to us that we reflect that. And disability coverage is certainly a part of that.
Yeah, I love that. Where are we at, friends? I think Jerrod might have actually answered our next question too.
Yeah, he did. He answered the question about the average number of people being diagnosed with autism already. So thanks for that, Jerrod. I can tell you that also a lot of people with autism, they have difficulty with in college. There's a program called ACE, Autism College Experience, through Ohio State University that one of my coworkers helped develop. And that's a program to help people succeed, because sometimes people with autism may do something that to somebody might say is not good or is violent, but they aren't doing it for violence. They're trying to express themselves technically. So the point is, everyone is different in their autism, and that's just something to point out.
Yeah, that's a great point. I actually, while you were talking about that, and while Zoe was talking about her time in college, I thought about, oh my gosh, how nice would it have been to have known I was autistic when I was in college? That would have been so helpful, because when I look back, there are so many things that quote unquote went wrong, even though I got through college just fine, that it would have been nice to just have the, the clarification, I guess.
How can people access resources on autism that you know about? I'm gonna let Zoe answer first.
Sure. So I'll start by plugging the resources that my organization, the Autistic Self Advocacy Network, has created. We have a really great resource library full of books and PDFs and policy guides and other things. We have a book that is for people who are discovering that they're autistic called Welcome to the Autistic Community. We have a guide for parents of newly diagnosed children called Start Here. We have a guide to the transition age called Roadmap to Transition. As well as those, we have a bunch of policy guides, so breaking down policy issues like Medicaid or the federal budget, or the Affordable Care Act or the Americans with Disabilities Act. Many of those are in plain language and easy read formats. Many of them have accompanying videos. We have a whole library of resources on COVID-19, including topics like vaccination and what is long COVID and other kinds of the things that folks need to know about. So definitely check out our resource library. I can also recommend other great organizations that produce resources for the autistic community or for people with intellectual developmental disabilities in general. So also check out AWN, the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, as well as Green Mountain Self Advocates and Self Advocates Becoming Empowered, all of which put out great resources.
Thank you, Zoe. Jerrod can go next.
What I have learned over a long time is that information evolves, to put it mildly, and you can Google something in 5 seconds and get answers, and it's a whole new world in that regard. But in particular with disability, the way that we talk about disability has evolved over the years. I'll give you a very quick story. And I've worked with Autism Speaks since I started down this road. They have evolved quite a bit, and I think there's a lot more evolution coming. But I remember very early, even before my oldest was diagnosed, the theory of autism was that we can cure it. Our unfortunate, looking back on it, videos about finding a cure for autism. And now it's cringeworthy and it makes you upset. But back then, that was the rallying cry. And that is an unfortunate part of the history of the attitudes that people had about autism. That one of the things that, like I said, in 20 years of doing this, that I've enjoyed seeing is that it is okay to evolve in thought. And it is wonderful to see people now evolving. Remember, Autism Awareness Month is now Autism Acceptance Month. What is that? It's evolution. It's people thinking more in terms of the humanity of what this is. And how do we include people? How do we make sure that they're a part of our society? That was not always the case. And so the only thing I would say on this is it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to evolve. It is okay to say that I was wrong on something, or I didn't have the right perception of that. It's okay to speak up when you think something's wrong. It is. That's great. I think we all grow because of that. And so that's why I'm so excited to see what the Self Advocacy Network does. I'm so excited to see what so many other organizations that have unique voices in this forum, what they can do to help evolve, to create real change, not only at the government level, but in society. I think that's one of the most exciting things about being a part of this movement is to watch us all grow up together.
Thank you, Jerrod. Let Amy take over.
And yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. We have come such a long way in just acceptance and awareness and all things. Like I said before, like self-reflection, even for myself, maybe not beat yourself up over certain things of your thinking, or trying to find ways, little tricks for yourself to make things easier for you. I think we can all learn from but yeah, resources for the Autism Society. If you go to autismcentralohio.org, we have a resources tab. We try to keep very up to date. So families and friends can definitely partake in that information. And we also encourage, definitely reach out. There's contact information on there. We will most definitely set you in lines with someone you need to talk to. So whether it's, school districts or, anything like that, what you happen to be going through, we can kind of make that connection, and find you someone who can, give you a little bit more resources on where you're at in life. So
what do you think are all the most important takeaways for Autism Acceptance Month for our audience?
that it's not just this month.
Sorry.
No.
Can all of you tell one thing about the importance of Autism Awareness Month?
Or Acceptance Month. We can start with Amy again.
Sorry.
Yeah, that it's not just this month. It's our lives. It's a lot of people's lives. And that we're here. So
Thank you, Amy. And then Jerrod.
I think that's, Amy, that's a great answer. I think it is not, this is a month to bring it up, but we have 12 months a year where we can celebrate our strengths, we can celebrate our wins, and we can always fight for better opportunities. I have an 18-year-old, like we said earlier, who is going to be hopefully able to enter the job market at some point. I would love for the opportunity for someone like Brady to be gainfully employed. That is not so rare in the community. I'd like for there to be more of an appreciation for that potential skill set and evolve that into the job market. There's always something you can fight for. That is way past the month of April. That is that's a 12-month a year gig. You can always advocate, you can always fight for a way to improve your opportunities, your living standards. And, we don't win those fights all the time. And it gets real hard. It gets real hard to fight, real demoralizing. And that's, like we said at the very beginning, this is a process where tears are shed. This is a process where you live an emotional roller coaster about feeling truly accepted. People love to say it, but what does it actually mean when it's implemented? Because sometimes it's not so pretty and it can be messy and it's not perfect. But it's real. It's what people need. And change is hard. And that's one of the things that can be celebrated not just in April, but all year round. And that's why we need to do a good job of speaking all year round.
Thank you, Jerrod. Now, Zoe.
Sure. So one thing that I would love for folks to use Autism Acceptance Month to do is to learn a little bit more about what helps autistic people be included in society. And then look for ways you can put that into practice in your own life. Whether that's making sure that you are not biased against people with disabilities when you're hiring people for a job, or whether that's helping an autistic coworker, get started in your workplace, or whether that's advocating for a policy issue that would help autistic people be included. So if you want to learn more about these policy issues, ASAN has some great introductions. You can check that out on our website. If you want to think about how to do that in your own life, I really encourage everyone to do that. And just think about, like, how can we make this a better world for people with disabilities? One action at a time.
Thank you, Zoe. And then Christine can answer this one.
Well, my takeaway is that it really shows that there are so many people with differences. One thing I sometimes feel is that when we have certain patterns in us, there are certain people who don't seem to accept that, and they say you can change. Well, what if this is the way you are and you are who you are? You can always improve yourself, but you can't. We are born and have the gift of having autism. And so you have to have respect for them because we all have our different skills and weaknesses, just like everybody does.
Thank you, Christine. I'm going to answer next because the takeaway for the Autism Acceptance Month, because I used to be very rigid on my thinking and had so many negative things about everything. And even when I worked in a vocational enclave, I had so many negative things. But finally, since I started my current job at Disability Rights Ohio almost 10 years ago, I've become more accepting of disabilities, and it's made me become more of self-advocacy because at my other job that I spent 15 years, I was held back from many different from growing at my job, part because of disabilities, and I even had a coworker that mocked me for my disability, and then there was another coworker who didn't want to admit that he was disabled, and I'm sad about that. And but I am so grateful that I'm at my current place right now to advocate for people with disabilities, and that's the reason why. And everybody, most has a different type of disability, and every makes us unique. And thank you. And Lindsay can go.
Thanks, KP. That was really vulnerable to share about your job, so I want to mention that. And for me, I think I'm at a place where for Autism Acceptance Month, I'd love for our audience to really dig into not only themselves and their own potential biases, but just opening themselves up to different kinds of people and talking to them and meeting them. I think some of the kindest, most intelligent, most passionate people I've met are autistic. And I think we would all do better as a society to see it as a positive inclusion into our society and our community, than to maybe how we used to, like Jerrod said, back in the fearmonger days when things were a lot more scared and fearful and a little bit more biased. So I think that's my push, is that those of us on this podcast right now have a pretty good understanding of acceptance and the autistic community as a whole, but maybe some of you listening, it's the first time you've heard someone say that they're autistic and not a person with autism, which is a complete evolution from how it used to be. So dig into that uncomfortability, dig into that and see where you might have some blind spots or where you might need to grow, and just accept that it's okay to change. Like we had mentioned earlier, it's okay to change your mind, it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to go to someone and say, hey, I was wrong about you, and I learned a lot more about it. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Lindsay. And we want to thank Zoe, Jerrod, and Amy for joining us today on the Disability 24/7 podcast, and for this special episode all about autism as a podcast made by people with autism. And this episode meant a lot to us, and we are so grateful that all of you could join. And thank you. And you can have your final words, Amy, Jerrod, and Zoe.
Thank you for
to
having me.
guys.
It's been a great
Yeah.
discussion.
Say thank you for you guys for doing this. Like I said, I just recently discovered your podcast, and I think it's amazing and wonderful, the things that you guys are doing. It's really a great job.
Thank you, Amy. And then Jerrod.
Glad to be invited, glad to be here, glad I could finally get this done, because it's important to me, and I'm really excited to see that. I love when people collaborate and make something that they're passionate about, and it's exciting to see that. It doesn't matter what the form is. I love a podcast, and so I think the fact that all of you working together to create this forum for people is a great thing. And I highly encourage you to continue with it, because voices matter and more voices are better. And it's a great thing that you're able to get this up and running. And I hope there's a bright future ahead.
Thank you, Jerrod. And then Zoe, the last one, ends Z, but in other countries like the parliamentary countries call it Z.
That's true, they do. Yeah, thank you for having me. I think it's been a great conversation, and so great to see, more people with disabilities leading the way with their own podcasts and other, productions just to get their perspective out there.
Thank
So-
you, Zoe.
So we look forward to hearing from all our viewers, especially all about this episode. Let us know your thoughts and takeaways.
Thank you, Christine. And you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and Instagram at Disability 24/7. And please subscribe. That would mean a lot to us. And everyone, you have a great day.